With thinking about gifts, whether it's from ads or Targets or walking through the grocery store, but we're always sort of being taught to think about gifts. And so I want to put the church and the Advent language into that same language that we're being inundated with all the time. But instead of thinking about the gifts that we need to buy, I want to think about the gifts that God is giving us anew this Advent and gives us again and again each Christmas. The greatest gift of all, of course, being Jesus. And this week we're looking at the fourth week of Advent, which the gift of Christmas that we receive this week is love. And what an incredible gift that is. And so last year, I had a really interesting Christmas because I had two weddings to do. The Saturday before and the Saturday after Christmas. And so this was an interesting experience. I remember just before I had taken the call to come and be the pastor here at St. Philip, my friend Nora, who lived in Florida, who I lived with when I was there, she said, "We're going to get married. I really want you to do the wedding. It's going to be on the Florida Panhandle, December 21st. So this is not, the best timing in the world for a pastor. But I said, okay, no matter what, I'll do it. And you guys were gracious enough to let me have a sub for that Sunday. And I went down to Florida to do their wedding. And then the Saturday after that, we flipped this whole sanctuary over. So many of you were here helping out for Megan and Michael's wedding to get everything ready for them to be married the Saturday after Christmas. And so this year, as I looked back on last Christmas, and I was trying to think about love and the ways that we receive love at Christmas, I was able to see last year, wow, what an incredible gift to have two distinct love stories to be a part of for Christmas last year. And so now every Christmas, I'm going to carry those love stories with me. And so as we think about the gift of love that Jesus brings us this Christmas, we hear these beautiful texts in the Bible that let us love one another. For love is of God, and everyone who knows God, or who knows love, knows God. That was sort of a little window through these two weddings that I got to peek through last year. So I wanted to think about what I had learned about love through those Christmas weddings last year. And so the first wedding, the couple up here inside the house, that's Nora and Josh. And we were getting ready to do their wedding outside. And they wanted to do a beach wedding. So we were getting everything ready, and it was very much a do-it-yourself wedding. So we were kind of scattering some rose petals on the beach, and we'd set up a bunch of chairs outside. And all of a sudden, it's about 10 minutes before the ceremony is about to begin, and the wind starts blowing, and the rain starts pouring down. And Nora's very indecisive, so she's kind of, well, I think maybe we can still do it. And finally, about 5 minutes before Josh came in, they had rented a house, so the reception was going to be inside this house. It was a small wedding, about maybe 50 people. So Josh walks in from outside, and he goes, "We're having it inside." 5 minutes till. So everybody had to run outside. I think Ben was part of it, go get the chairs, pick everything up, and totally, restructure everything. It's in the middle of a house. There really wasn't a great place to have a wedding ceremony, but we figured out that Nora was going to come down the stairs as sort of a with her dad. And I think I might have talked about her wedding to you all before, but she's from Kentucky. So she has lots of relatives from Appalachia, from up in the mountains, and they actually brought a mason jar of moonshine that they were going to have after the wedding, and they had it setting on the bar. So it's a very interesting setting for a wedding. But we're getting ready, and everything's kind of come into place, and it was actually, I think, for her grandparents who were there, it was maybe better to have it indoors because they were all that steady on their feet, and so they were able to just sit and have a front row seat right up in front to see Nora. And as we had the wedding, they couldn't have been happier. Even with this terrible weather that came at the last minute, we're inside a house. I mean, they're like walking past the sink with their attendants to have everything happen. The music was a little bit not how they planned. But they look back on that and they don't remember the rain. They don't remember how dirty everything was when they're bringing in the sand from outside. I think they remember how much they loved each other. They're finally in this place with all their family from Kentucky, from the Florida Panhandle, and a Lutheran pastor right in the middle of it all, right, doing the wedding service. And I see here too one of her, I think it was a junior bridesmaid blowing bubbles. You know, that's what they remember. Family, being together, love. And I think that's part of the gift of love that God intends for us to experience at Christmas. That just like their wedding, when the rain came, every Christmas, inevitably, something is going to go wrong. I got an email from a friend this morning that their heater went out. Just something, I think we had Roto-Rooter at our house one Christmas morning. So every year, something inevitably is going to go wrong on Christmas. But the kind of love that God intends for us, it doesn't matter if shipping is late, right? It doesn't matter if you forgot to include a gift receipt, if you got the wrong size sweater for your husband, if you got a necklace that your wife doesn't like. The kind of love that God intends for us in Christmas is a kind of love that is centered in being together, in presence. That's why he sent us the presence of Jesus. So that was really the lesson that I took with me from Nora and Josh's wedding, and I was able to come back here renewed and ready to do our Christmas Eve service here. And then just a few days later, we had the Hartman and Brakovich wedding. And one of the things that was so inspiring for me about that wedding is I came in here getting ready to do the wedding, and I couldn't believe how many of you from the congregation had already been here for some time, making sure that the church was all set up. And Todd and Jenny and Megan have been such an important part of St. Philip for so long. That so many of you were really wanting this sanctuary to be the perfect experience for them to have this wedding. And so even though it had been Christmas Eve, in just a few hours it was transformed into being a wedding. The other thing that I really noticed is that, you know, for Michael coming into this church, this was Megan's church. Everybody knew her family, and she'd been involved, and her parents had been involved for so long. And you could have said, you know, Megan, I want to find a new church that's really for us. I'm going to go, you know, somewhere else where we can make. Or you could have said, you can keep going there, but I'm not going to. You know, you could have said all kinds of things. But what you said is, you said, when I met Megan and we started praying together, we started reading our Bible together, that really made a difference in your life. And you decided, instead of saying we're going to go somewhere else or we're going to do something different, I'm going to become a part of this congregation too. As we look back at that a year ago, these two were even married yet. Now, Michael is on church council. Right? And I don't know how we would have had VBS without you, because you were up here in, you know, your outfit and you were leading all the kids. What was your name for VBS again?
Well, Dr. Claus.
Yes, yes. Leading all the VBS activities. And that came out of love. It began with love, right? To say, okay, I'm going to come into this new community that's been your family's community, but I'm going to make it our community too, as the Brakoviches now, right? And to bring new life into a community, and to become a part of that, and to really take that on. And that's been a great love story for all of us in the congregation to witness, and to see the ways that even romantic love and marriages can bring new life into a Christian community. So that's been really inspiring to see. Thanks for letting me borrow your story for this sermon. So as I was thinking about love and all the different ways that love comes to us at Christmas, I was thinking about the ways that Jesus' love often differs from the ways that we understand love in our lives. And I can think about that love is the foundation, not the fruit of Christmas and of life. So we have to think, I think, of love as the fruit. Love is like the gift. Love is the thing that we get. And so we do all this other stuff in order to get love. But really, love, and you see that in both of these marriages, love is the foundation. Love is the beginning. And out of love grows all these other things: stability, comfort, security, peace, family. But love is the fruit. Love begins with a choice. I think we have to think that the love is just going to happen if the stars align, everything comes together. But the love begins with a choice to be present with that other person. It's not just romantic love, but it's love in families, with your parents. Choosing to be present is the beginning of a life together in love. So love becomes the foundation of everything that we do. And love, too, is the foundation of God sending Jesus to us. Love at Christmas is forever. So many times we worry about the fleeting nature of love. But we can rest in the security of a love at Christmas that is forever, grounded in the resurrection of Jesus. And love, too, is that tie that binds us together. We often want to resist anything that will restrict us, anything that will restrict our freedom. But love in a Christian community is the tie that binds us together. And the love of Jesus coming down on Christmas binds us together to that love eternally. That nothing, not even death, not illness, not dementia, nothing can separate us from that love that comes to us at Christmas. Love is the experience of God's presence on earth. I think of Christmas in that stable in Bethlehem when that little baby was born to a no-name couple who didn't have much power in the world at that time. Love changed because God's presence on earth became real in a whole new way. God chose. God could have come to earth anyway, right? He could have come as he had before in a thundercloud, as lightning. He could have come as he came to Moses in a burning bush. But God chose to come fully present as a human being, and not just as a human being, but as a baby, in order that we might experience, and God might experience with us, that pure love that would bind us together forever. We've been talking each week about how the different gifts of Christmas sometimes surprise us, how peace surprises us at Christmas, how joy surprises us at Christmas, and love, too, can surprise us. Dinah, you might think one of these looks familiar because you sent it to me, and I think a lot of you have seen this story of a Jewish woman who works with people who are suffering from Alzheimer's. And she came to her, and I'm sure, Melanie, you know a lot about this too. She came to her to work with her, and words often didn't get through. And so she would ask her questions, and she didn't even understand. But it was when this woman, even a woman who is Jewish, started singing the old church songs from her growing up times, Jesus loves me, that's when a breakthrough happened. And a woman who had been sort of locked inside her own cage of dementia for many years, not able to communicate, not able to express her love, all of a sudden, through these words, something was unlocked. And she was able to experience love again, and she would reach out and touch her caregiver. And you could see the emotion welling up out of her. Love surprised her in those words of those Christmas songs and music. And maybe that'll happen to you this Christmas. You'll hear that one Christmas Eve hymn, maybe it's Silent Night with the candles, that unlocks something inside of you. You're able to experience that Christmas love again and new. Jesus' love surprises us. It comes into places of great conflict. You look back to the famous story, it's a picture here from World War I, where the soldiers on the eastern front, on the western front, the German soldiers and the Allied soldiers, they put down their weapons for the day and they crossed into no man's land. Where any other day, if they would have crossed into this no man's land between the troops, they would have been shot and killed. But on Christmas Day, somehow love broke through and surprised everybody, and these battle-hardened soldiers put down their weapons, came together. They had little Christmas trees. They sung carols. They even played a little game of football. But for a moment, Jesus' love surprised everybody, even in the midst of the battlefield. And so maybe in your life, maybe you're not in the midst of a battlefield in Europe, but maybe you're in the midst of your own battlefield. Maybe at work, maybe in the midst of a relationship. But Jesus' love this Christmas will even come into those battlefields of our lives and bring peace, bring love where it surprises us. Think into some of the ways that Jesus' love comes into the battlefield, even of America today. Think of a man I met a couple of weeks ago. His name is William Barber. He's a reverend pastor in North Carolina. And when I didn't know who he was, when I was eating with him, and he was walking in front of me in a buffet line, and you can see he's kind of slumped over. He has a little bit of a hunchback. It's been an injury that's been with him for his life, and he sort of shuffles along, looks to the ground when he walks. And I didn't know much about him. He took some potatoes, I took some potatoes. Later on that night, he spoke to our group. He gave a sermon. And I saw the ways that Jesus' love transformed him. And so even his body, which had been broken, came alive as he spoke about the gospel. He works in North Carolina. He's the head of the NAACP in North Carolina. And right now, I don't know if you've read in the news that there's a story about a young man who was found hanging to death, and they're trying to determine if it was a suicide or perhaps if he was killed. Let's make it look like a suicide. And so this Reverend Barber, he's right on the front lines right now in these continuing battles with race, with injustice, and he's trying to walk in that fine line and show the love of Jesus, even in the midst of these battling grounds. And we haven't read as much about this incident as maybe we've read about Ferguson or Eric Garner. And I think part of that, and that's one of the things that he said, sometimes we're not getting as much press because we're trying to work together. So he's actually been working with law enforcement to try and figure out what's going on in this case. And he said, we actually, between me and the police chief in town, we were trying to beat each other to try and figure out who was going to bring forward a further investigation. But he's found that when he puts Jesus' love first, when he puts those verses in the Bible where it talks about a new covenant coming out of love, when he puts that first, even when he's walking in the midst of these difficult issues of race and American injustice in America, he's found that when he puts love first, that they're able to work together. And that Jesus' love is able to surprise him. And it was able to surprise me as I saw this man who looked so bent over, and then as he spoke and he read the Bible, he became transformed, visibly. Pray that that happens for each one of us this Christmas. That as we hear these words of the Bible anew, that our own bent over figures, bent over by worries, by fears, by relationships, whatever's going on in our lives, money, worries, whatever's going on, though, as we hear these Christmas words anew, that we too are transformed to be able to stand tall in the presence of Jesus' love. We've been talking each week about the ways. So if we experience this peace, if we experience this joy, how do we give it to others? And how do we give Jesus' love to others? Love, people often assume love is the opposite of hate. But really, love is the opposite of apathy. It's so easy to walk through and pretend that we don't care. But love means taking a moment to stop as God did when he sent Jesus, and say, I care. I'm I'll leave all of us with a question this morning. What should our churches feel like? If experiencing God is an experience of love, and that experience of love that I felt at those 2 weddings last year, then how can our churches reflect that experience of love that God has for us? Let us pray. Lord, I give you thanks for the love that came into the world with Jesus, and the love that continues to surprise us and bring new life where we once thought was only death. Let's continue to strengthen us and keep us in your love, especially in these days.